a type of pain people underestimate until they experience it for themselves. Story 1. So, I'm an unlucky, right? I've been through some. I used to have migraines and I was like, this sucked. I once bit into a carrot and it pushed a tooth into a nerve, and the nerve was just like, for a month until it got infected and then died. And that was pretty bad. I had an IUD inserted and removed. I had an ovarian cyst rupture. I glass shatter into my hand and need to be removed. I had an upper palate expansion surgery. I had a thyroidectomy. Let me tell you, it all pales in comparison to what I'm about to tell you. So, a few years ago, I got a migraine, and it didn't stop, and it just kept getting worse and worse. So my doctors decided to do a lumbar puncture. The LP didn't clot. All the CSF in body leaked out into my abdomen. My brain didn't have its cushion. It was warped out of shape in my skull, and I could feel it, like 9,000 knives shredding my mind apart. If I tried to stand, my legs just gave out from the overwhelming agony. The hospital told me I needed to wait 5 days before they'd do the surgery to fix it. They wanted to see if my body would heal on its own. I spent 5 days in. I forgot to eat. I couldn't move. I couldn't function. I just existed in agony, trying not to move an inch because the pain would swell again. Eventually, I got the surgery, which, LOL. I could feel them stabbing needles into my spine and flooding the space between my vertebrae with blood, ballooning the vertebrae apart, sending jolts of electricity to my feet. But then, the original illness they were testing for. Too much cerebral spinal fluid crushing my brain. Took about 4 hours for that to come back. Also 2 years for doctors to deal with the fact I had a collapsed cerebral spinal fluid vein. All the CSF backed up, crushing my brain, optic nerves, spinal cord. I was basically catatonic in agony for 2 years. In bed, just out of it. Worse than a migraine, because that's a thing. Story 2. Chronic pain. People will treat chronic pain sufferers like whiny children, but when they've had the same headache for 3 days, they're incapacitated. No, Karen. Get out in the sun like the rest of us have to be. Story 3. Grief for pets. When one of my cats died last year, I realized just how difficult it really was. I cried for days and felt guilty for not being there to say goodbye. Story 4. Domestic violence. It causes CPTSD, which medical professionals will tell you is common in law enforcement, firemen, war veterans, and domestic violence survivors. That's if you survive. I'm so sorry that so many of you resonate with this. It's absolutely life-destroying. Story 5. The loss of a pregnancy. Making the decision to abort late term when you find out your child has an incurable defect that they will not survive. No, I'm not interested in a debate. Jesus and I are all good. Work on your own grace and salvation and do not worry about mine. Story 6. Grief. You think that you can handle it, and most days you do. But the soul crush you experience by losing someone close to you, it's not something you can understand until you've gone through it yourself. The emotional pain is incredible. Story 7. Gout and passing kidney stones. The latter is sometimes described as the closest a man can get to the pain of childbirth. I'm sure childbirth can hurt more. The good thing about kidney stones, at least for me, was how quickly I was given heavy-duty pain relief. No arguing, no pleading. Just one look at me and the nurse was like, "Can we get some morphine over here?" Story 8. It sounds silly, but all of it. This is an important subject in my work, the intersection of psychotherapy and manual therapy. And it amazes me how much people, including myself, find ourselves surprised at the extent of pain and its impact in our lives. As far as I can tell, if we haven't personally experienced something, then we have a tendency to minimize it. This is pretty broadly applicable. Cognitive bias runs deep in our species. If we see someone running late for the bus, we have the tendency to assume something negative about their character. But when we're running late, we're victims of circumstances despite trying our best. People's ideas about pain are at least that uncharitable. To be fair, we can't imagine a sensation for which we have no frame of reference. So when I was younger, I thought the old "I've fallen and I can't get up" bit was comedy or exaggeration. Now I know only someone who has experienced debilitating back pain can understand how it feels. Same with anything experiential. And I think that fact is hugely responsible for the prevalence of mental health stigma. If someone has never experienced depression, they simply aren't equipped to empathize. We can have compassion, we can be with people in pain, but I believe that we can share the burden, nor even really understand, no matter how much we might wish to. Story 9. Opioid withdrawal. Nobody even tries to understand because we did it to ourselves and whatever else. But it's really harrowing stuff. Your entire body starts to malfunction. Every nerve in your body is screaming at you for a chemical it is not getting, which translates to full-body bone joint pain, nerve pain, muscle pain. And that's just the pain. Then there's the massive gastrointestinal reaction, constant yawning, eyes watering, intense depression and anxiety, hot-cold flashes. Oh, and it's impossible to sleep for more than 1 to 2 hours for days. Yeah, glad I'm sober. Withdrawal feels like being trapped in a nightmare realm. Story 10. Psychological pain alienation, bullying, exclusion. In ancient Rome, they considered being excluded from a community was so damaging that anyone sentenced to death could choose to be exiled instead. Ancient Turkish proverb, the axe forgets what the tree remembers. Story 11. Kidney stones actually made me want someone to kill me. I've birthed 3 kids, not great experiences, gallbladder stone attack and later removal teeth issues. But kidney stones were the worst, and I don't think the pain can truly be described accurately. Story 12. Combat. It's nothing like video games or movies. It's gritty, gory, intense, and scary as. Also, people don't respawn. I say this as a multiple deployment veteran who was a medic. Story 13. Bladder pain. You have no idea until you experience it. It's not just pain, it's urgency. The urgency is warped into pain like needles in your bladder. You can never be comfortable. Laying down? The pain increases until you have to go pee. But peeing doesn't make it stop, just relieves it by like 1 point for about 5 minutes. You lay sobbing on the floor of the shower just peeing on yourself because you're so exhausted. This is what living with interstitial cystitis is like. Interstitial cystitis. The condition is underfunded, under-researched, and no one gives a because it falls into women's health. The lost FDA-approved medication is from the 90s. I won't live to 50 because I will take my life before then. Also consider that 85 of medications flare us. We cannot take life-saving medications or else face pain like acid in our bladder. I will choose death over that. If I get cancer, I am as good as dead. Story 14. Slipped disc. When people say, oh yay, I've had a bad back. Nope. Once you do a disc, you are for the rest of your life. Numb legs, sciatica spasms, millions of painkillers that damage your liver and kidneys look after your backs. People. Story 15. I have Crohn's disease, and I don't think anyone can fathom the constant pain because on the outside I look completely fine. However, my joints hurt from the inflammation, my stomach is always sore, my bowels cramp and bloat is a huge issue. One day my shoulder and wrist hurt, next day it's my back, hips, and a knee, and then the next maybe I only have some stomach pain. I couldn't even hug my own children because it felt like my skin hurt. Story 16. I know a lot of people won't understand it having not experienced it before, but for me the worst type of pain is the emotional pain I experience every day from gender dysphoria as a trans woman. Story 17. The loss of my soulmate. We were together for 10 years and he died suddenly in 2022. This pain is crippling and it never gets better. It's way worse than any physical pain I've ever felt. I'd take 1,000 broken bones just to have him back. Story 18. I currently have spinal stenosis. It means that my legs don't work and are all tingly due to my nerves overfiring, resulting in hypersensitivity to the point that putting socks on is excruciating. I struggle to walk and tire easily. My back feels like it was hit with a cannonball, not unlike kidney stones, and on top of it, I have no sense of balance. Story 19. This sounds ridiculous, but really bad constipation. One of the worst stomach pains I've ever experienced. Thought it was appendicitis and had to go to the ER for it. Story 20. Getting older. As things in your body start breaking down naturally, particularly joints, it just hurts. Muscle tissue also decreases and heals slower, and muscles get stiff much more easily and quickly. Cat Williams does a good bit on this, how he thought his grandfather was just lazy until it started hitting him. Story 21. Scapegoat. If you were scapegoated by your family of origin, it kind of sets you up to be the scapegoat in every social group you become a part of. Scapegoats serve a purpose in dysfunctional groups. Until the scapegoat heals from that trauma, scapegoating is a form of insidious psychological abuse, but it's invisible, therefore unacknowledged by society at large, which adds another layer to the trauma. They will repeat this deeply, deeply painful pattern. And being scapegoated goes hand in hand with low self-worth and low confidence, therefore more likely to be taken advantage of, but then blamed for allowing it to happen, when all they want is true connection. It's agonizing. So the next time you meet someone who you'd label as a people pleaser, a pushover, a doormat, often that's a lifetime of trauma that began in childhood, and no one truly understands except other people who were scapegoated. Story 22. Childbirth. I'm happy to admit that it may not be the most painful thing you could experience, but it's the most painful thing that I have experienced. I fully underestimated it as well. Story 23. Once my jeans caught on fire while camping. I managed to put them out in under 5 seconds, but my calf experienced a 4 by 4 inch second-degree burn. The initial burn was tough, But what was truly painful was the healing process afterwards for the next 1 to 2 months. Story 24. Mental suffering. We all naturally fear physical pain. It's built into our even basic instincts, so we know that type hurts no question. We know that from birth. But the complexities of mental psychological pain? That hits for a lot longer, and a lot of the time, a lot harder. Story 25. Migraines. If anything available over the counter cures your headache, it isn't a migraine. It's another level of pain that people have no idea about unless they experience it. It makes you want to die sometimes. Story 26. Not pain, but suffering is diabetic ketoacidosis. Was in the ER for about 4 or 5 days, couldn't keep my head straight, myself like crazy, and my body just felt numb, cold, hot, and vibrating all at the same time. The worst part is the thirst. You feel extremely dehydration. Your mouth feels drier. Then a dessert. You become so desperate for liquid that if someone came to offer to in your mouth, I'm 98 sure I would beg for it at that moment. Keep your diabetics in check, people. Story 27. I was a paramedic and would on average rate the worst I saw as number 3, severe endometriosis, number 2, back pain, number 1, gallstones. Fractures and back pain you can maneuver to get them reasonably comfortable, but for endometriosis and gallstones there was no comfortable position, and often the pain relief didn't even touch it. You could see the pain on their face with all color drained, and like they've been 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. Story 28. Hip pain. Severe osteoarthritis in both hips from a fairly young age. So bad now in my mid-40s I have trouble walking, going upstairs, bending, squatting is near impossible. Often in so much pain that I can't find a comfortable position for sitting or laying down either. Story 29. A tonsillectomy as an adult. I've experienced ruptured ovarian cysts and dealt with endometriosis and adenomyosis for my entire adult life, ended up having a hysterectomy at 41. I have never experienced pain anything quite like that of the scabs slowly coming away from the surgical site of my tonsils, though. Excruciating doesn't begin to describe it. I ended up back to the doctor and was prescribed liquid morphine, and even that didn't dull the pain. Story 30. Grieving someone still alive. That torture of knowing somewhere they're still waking up, drinking coffee, going to work, laughing at the same jokes that you used to love, but no longer in your universe. Story 31. Grief, especially the sudden and tragic kind. Lost my mother at 22 when she was 51, and haven't been right since. I don't have the words. It's an unspoken understanding between grievers. Story 32. Healing from a skin graft. Having to debride the area in question every day. That's some of the worst pain I ever felt. Fortunately, it was a very small area. I can't imagine what burn victims go through. Story 33. I've had kidney stones. Big ones. 9 out of 10 pain. Intense migraines requiring hospitalization. 9-10 out of 10. Those are incredibly painful, intense experiences. But it's nothing compared to the life-draining, wanting to die, sustained, never-ending chronic pain I deal with daily. I was injured during training in the Marines. Dislocated my left knee. Month later, go in for surgery, and being the incompetent doctors they are, I end up with compartment syndrome in both legs from them not adjusting position for 10 hours. They cut open left thigh and right calf on both sides of each and attach sponges connected to vacuum pumps. That pain was an 11 out of 10. Non-stop screaming and vomiting from the intensity. Eventually put into medically induced coma. I would take all of those at once for a year, compared to what I have now. I had my sciatic nerve severed in my left thigh from the surgeries. Lost most of my thigh from subsequent debridements and surgeries. I have severe neuropathy and chronic pain. I suffer every day, non-stop. I barely sleep, can't work, no more hobbies, no more friends, and I am barely managing as a stay-at-home dad. If it wasn't for my wife and kids, I definitely would have ended it years ago. The pain is about a 5 to 6 out of 10 at all times, 8 on my worst days. It just never stops. I've been like this since 2005. I have tried everything, even experimental, illegal, and spiritual. Nothing has really helped, besides epidurals I used to get twice a year. The VA and private doctors will no longer perform those on me. Last one was nearly 6 years ago. I would do terrible things for a single day of relief. The only person who really knows how bad things have gotten is my therapist. My wife is an amazing woman, but I can't burden or scare her more than I already have. I just smile and tell her I am okay. She is so good to me. I don't want advice or platitudes. Sometimes it just helps my sanity to type or say it out loud. Disabilities you can't see. Story 34. Grief. Everyday things hit a bit different, like a ton of bricks over and over again. That you're gone. Feels like the wind just got knocked out of me and my throat is gasping for air, but I'm not gasping. I'm just here with my throat seeking air to breathe, but I don't give it any. Not purposely, just paralyzed waiting for something. Oh, there it is, the air. I hurry and wipe my tears before someone sees because I don't want to be comforted. I don't want to be hugged, I just want to wake up. Story 35. The entire process of healing a bad burn, especially if it's in a bad place, sensitive like your face or difficult to rest like your hand or an elbow. Worse if it gets infected. Or the scab gets ripped off. Story 36, 1983. Forceps delivery with zero pain meds. Doctor also had to rotate my son inside me first, as he was posterior. Oh, and my country doctor let me be dilated to a 10 for 4 hours as the baby was stuck. He called in an OBGYN to take over. I remember begging for death. Story 37. External fixators screwed into bone to keep my leg from being able to move after my motorcycle accident, but before amputation. The best pain meds barely touch the pain. Story 38. Pain from eating. I don't mean overeating. I mean when something is wrong with your body and the physical action of eating and digestion becomes painful. Story 39. Getting an IUD in. The clamps from digging into your cervix and then them poking around in your uterus. And they tell you just to take Advil and Tylenol beforehand. Almost passed out, it was so painful. Story 40. When you know something is wrong with your body but doctors can't, figure out what's wrong with you. On top of not feeling yourself, it's extremely lonely and frustrating. Story 41. Watching your grandparent progress with Alzheimer's. Them going from just repeating the same stories to not talking, and emptiness in their eyes as you talk to them. Story 42. The betrayal-heartbreak combo of finding out the person you've spent a decade married to literally has a double life. It's emotional, yes, but literally caused physical pain for months from the stress and shock of it all. Constant nausea and panic attacks. Story 43. Gallstones. I was 22 and had stones, but since I was young and male, no one gave me an ultrasound. I would have bankrupted myself in the US multiple times over. Luckily, I was in Canada and was able to go to the hospital over and over. But sadly, both ends were scoped for naught, and I was told I had IBS when I had nothing wrong with my shits or intestines, just my stomach. Here's some Nexium. See you later. Toothaches have hurt, but I could do something about it. This was like a broken rib plus the worst stomach pain imaginable, and nothing helped except max dose muscle relaxants, 20 minutes later minimum, or opioids. Like I had been stabbed through the chest. One of the times they gave me a placebo shot, I'm sure was saline, and sent me home. Still hurt like, but I got the hint and waited it out at home. The next time was when they believed me. I specifically called them out on it and said if they didn't want to give me morphine, fine. But don't make me suffer at home wondering why no one knows what's wrong with me. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be a burden. And please don't mistake me giving about being an inconvenience for not giving about my condition. That's when I had my medical charts reviewed. Story 44. Kidney stones. Only happened to me once, but I had 3 stones simultaneously, and it felt like someone was stabbing me with a butcher knife and twisting the blade. No pause, no relief, just constant misery vomiting. I could barely walk or even think. Story 45. Emotional pain. The emotional after effects of abuse are something you never really get over. You learn to live with it, but it's always there right at the back of your mind. It never goes away. And there's the aspect that those monsters who did that to you actually changed a part of who you are on a fundamental level, and there's nothing you can really do about it but learn to deal with it. It's a lingering pain that's inescapable. You live in its shadow for the rest of your life. Story 46. Tooth pain. Like you think, oh, it's just a tooth until it feels like your entire skull is pulsating, and you can't eat, sleep, or think straight. Suddenly, the idea of yanking it out with pliers starts to sound reasonable. Another underrated one, kidney stones. People think it's just some back pain until you're writhing on the floor, swearing that this is how it ends. Absolute nightmare. Oh, and shout out to burns, even the minor ones. You don't realize how much you use a body part until it stings every time it touches literally anything. 1010 would not recommend. Story 47. Suicide of a family member friend. Even if it's someone you weren't close to. I thought I was okay. I held it together for my family because someone had to. But I had a breakdown that lasted 2 years. I was so dazed and out of it for 2 years because I refused to admit I wasn't okay. I had a breakdown a few days after his death where I almost broke up with my then boyfriend, now husband, because I was just losing my mind. I turned off my location, grabbed our puppy, and left. I went to a friend's house where I cried for the first time. They comforted me, distracted me, and got a hold of my partner. Then sparked panic attacks where I would black out. Severe paranoia. I thought I would die anytime I left my house. I quit my job. I almost dropped out of trade school. I lived off of my savings and drained everything. I'm finally getting better, but I still break down around the time of his death. But thankfully, my family stuck together through it all. We all are hyper aware of each other. My then boyfriend, now my amazing husband, stuck through it all. He watches me like a hawk for any signs of mental distress now, but I'm better at asking for help now. You never realize how it truly you up until you have to stand at the coffin of a 24-year-old. When you have to watch 70-year-old veterans salute someone who's barely an adult, you don't know how horrible it is to listen to the 21 gun salute while your aunt cries over the guns. When your grandpa, who was also a veteran, stood there and refused to show emotion or even speak. When everyone was so shocked and heartbroken no one was physically able to give a eulogy, so another cousin read a Facebook post he made on Memorial Day about how 22 veterans a day is 22 too many. Story 48. At 13, I had testicular torsion and hydrocele. Imagine the pain required for a 13-year-old boy to say, "Mom, help me. My hurt's so bad." Pediatrician looked at them, sent us to the ER. ER scheduled emergency surgery on my. And they hurt so bad I didn't care. Turns out the removed part of one, due to necrosis, of my ball. I still have nightmares about the doctor who came into my room post-op, pulled off the pants they gave me, and peeled off the scabbed-over surgical dressing. He then proceeded to use what looked like a pair of pliers to remove the drain tube that has been sewn into my. I felt unimaginable pain. In my. My whole body was suddenly on fire and yet simultaneously freezing. I first lost color vision and then the rest. The world noisily went silent as I finally passed out. IUD insertion, or removal. While kidney stones are the worst continuous pain I've had, the IUD made my soul leave my body. I've had it done twice now, second time with pain relief, and I just can't fathom how a body can register that much pain at once. Story 49. I've had a couple of these reading through the comments, so I'd like to add an unusual one, starting a vasectomy and not realizing until it's too late that the local is not working. I know it was a surprise for everyone else too, because the doctor continued as I answered the "Does anything hurt?" A simple yes does not suffice, folks. You gotta scream a couple times. Just for reference, y'all, LOL. Story 50. Tinnitus, severe vertigo, unanticipated job loss when performing excellent in your job, layoff, downsized, homelessness, severe dental pain, divorce, being ugly. Story 51. Heartbreak. The pain is unique, especially as every situation that leads to it is so varied. People can say whatever they want, but until your heart breaks yourself and those rose-colored glasses come off you can't see clearly. Story 52. My wife had hip replacement surgery 6 weeks ago. 3 days ago, she moved just right to dislocate the hip joint. I have never seen her in pain to the point she was in actual fear. This is a woman who has birthed 3 kids and had multiple prior joint replacements. I never want to experience what she went through that evening. The ER was able to reset the joint and she is much better now. Story 53. Gallstones. I have chronic pain and have experienced some pretty painful things, but gallstones were easily the worst. They start randomly for no reason, last for hours, and literally nothing makes the pain stop. I did literally everything I had access to, and nothing made the pain stop until the stone passed. It was made worse by the doctors ignoring me and writing me off. I had gallbladder attacks for 2 full years before they finally removed it. They happened more and more, from every 2 months to monthly, weekly, daily, and then constant. By the time they finally took it out, it was so inflamed it was causing my liver to fail. I'm all better now, but God, it was so awful. Story 54. Gallbladder attack. I thought I was dying with the first one. Second one happened in front of colleagues, and I had a couple cringe and explain to others that their gallbladder attacks hurt worse than childbirth. Story 55. Internal bleeding. At first, it feels like aggressive gas. Then it gets progressively worse until you can't stand up straight, are in perpetual cramping of your entire torso, and any movement, literally any movement, including breathing, sets off another round of cramping, even though the first round hasn't ended. Then you get the joys of recovering from abdominal surgery to repair the bleed. Story 56. Radiculopathy. When a herniated disc pushes your nerve root, it's constant and doesn't respond well to most pain treatments. It also heals incredibly slow.